Well, I have to go back in time and do 1964, which seems a sort of study you would have thought an eventful year. But in fact, in it, I took law a year early. I took, than the other exams. Actually completing the study effectively from February to May, an otherwise 2-year course that was condensed into 1 year for us, but I missed the first term, of course, because I was in love with Linda. End of 63, first term of tech college, and my whole mind was filled with being in love with her, and absolutely lovely. By the grace of God, she ditched me by January when her previous boyfriend came home from abroad. I was no competition for him. He was older and a folk singer with a charisma, and I was I was history, but in sheer kindness she still sort of would have kept me on, but I thought, no, this is not on at all. So in despair, of course, I turned to study, thank God. And I mean thank God too. And copied up my friend's notes that he'd taken religiously, being an accountant to be. That was his future in life. A good friend he was too, John, who I'd known at school. And it was by him that I was actually at Tech College. Otherwise, I'd have possibly just gone to the grammar school, which was quite near to where I lived. I remember it being built. But it was not the academic success gave me a tremendous lift. Of course, that was a miracle in itself. But it was my year of study in other ways. I was reading Plato in the civic library, public library, the reference library, upstairs. This old-fashioned type building you would think of, especially from a New Zealand point of view. I don't think it's there now. They probably bulldozed it. I don't know. So I was at Tech, and the spare time when I wasn't studying most earnestly, practicing either my notes as in law or textbook that I found in the two subjects that I was also studying very seriously, government and economics. The rest of the time I spent studying Plato, Republic in particular, but other related stuff as well. And I think it was at this time I'd got the book Straight and Crooked Thinking by Robert H. Thowless, which gave a very helpful guide to logical thinking, really did. I was becoming a philosopher, of course, in the Socratic literary tradition. On my own, self-study, so to speak. Nobody else was interested in this apart from my humanist society. Well, I enjoyed that, and I belonged to that. That was a key thing for me. I was bereft without Linda, of course. Great unhappiness. Great turning to philosophy as a sort of consequence. picked up a great concern for, quite literally, the poor, locally and of the world generally. Did a weekend job and holiday job much of that year at the permanent amusement park fairground place, the Kerswell, where my heart was open to real needs of the marginal people in society, and they were marginal. And you would say corrupt from a society point of view, and, you know, drink and, well, drugs. But then the youth was tending towards drugs, especially being a seaside town, Southend-on-Sea. And I had a friendship group that were druggies. How they accepted me is beyond me, really, because I was not. I didn't take drugs. But I'd socialise with them, meet with them, sometimes right through the night. They couldn't understand how I would keep awake, whereas they were under the influence of whatever white powder they were taking and so on. Never touched it myself, but cared for them. I think they knew it. I think they knew that I was, you know, in English society terms, a different class, but a bit philosophical. And they were, in their way, great thinkers, you see, through various unhappinesses of life. Some of them died of their drugs, you understand. Some just suicide. And the rest I don't know about. One or two of them were really close friends. Meet them also at folk clubs and so on. Because Linda was a folk club, and well, it didn't mean the same without Linda. But I still loved people, of course. The disadvantaged. My eldest son, so like that. If there was someone who was disadvantaged, he was their immediate and solid, faithful friend. And if you were successful and had everything, you scarcely existed for him, really, by comparison. Quite a wonderful chap. Yeah. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. But Marshall had a staggering year of achievement, academically, of course, philosophically. You would say, as regards spiritual development, spiritual, in the right direction. Not specifically religious, you understand. In fact, very much not, really. I was a bit confused by the way that Plato would refer to the gods and so on and the religion of his day, and seemed to be sort of accepting it as data. Bit of a surprise to me. I didn't think philosophers would do that. I thought they were all secular, especially the founders of philosophy. And perhaps he was, really. I must say, Plato is a bit of a mystery in the sense of Jason Reza Georgiani's view that what he said and wrote was a manipulative gloss, perhaps, on what he thought and purposed to achieve. that in fact he was rather more of a, well, acting as a Persian agent, really, to change the world accordingly. By some very supposedly religious means. I didn't realise that at the time. I was just carried away with the rationality discourses. But a great help it was to me, both learning learning logic. I would learn formal logic when I went to uni under Alistair McIntyre, the sort of world philosopher before he must be dead now. And it was a year of sort of loneliness, really, and of deep change, in that I had this parallel earnest study which captivated my attention and of course was steering me to an academic future. I mean, my view was of, if you like, Plato's Academy, of what the university was to be. Got a bit of a shock when I got there and found nobody was as dedicated as Marshall. I've been like that, you know. When it came to Christianity, I was a bit shocked at how watery they were in their supposed acclaimed devotion to their religion. They seemed to know nothing about it and nothing about the consistency of it, and very little about the practice too. I was not impressed. But I was the same with academics. I was not impressed. They were not the geniuses we're meant to be expecting. You know, I was impressed with McIntyre, but only in as far as he was my equal. I mean, I was that arrogant, and probably that realistic too. I could see that he was in some ways quite coarse, which distressed me, vulgar. But I greatly admired his acclaim of rationality and logic. Did formal logic with him, you know, P hook Q and all that stuff. Looks like algebra. You write it down as a algebraic proof. Yeah. I really couldn't see it had anything much to do with economics, but it had a lot to do with philosophy and rational thinking, and that's what I was interested in. And he was an outstanding academic character to know. Oh, really? I don't mean I knew him well. But we had good discussions. In fact, I could say there was no other academic at university that impressed me in the way that he did. He was, to my mind, you see, the nearest sort of one could get to a living Socrates, as Plato rather. I suspect that Socrates was largely myth. I don't mean there wasn't a person who was named Socrates, but a bit like Jesus. I mean, there's many Jesuses in history, but none of them would match the story. And same with Socrates. I mean, the reality no way could match Plato's presentation of him. Sorry, I don't think I've said that clearly. I mean, I think the view we have of Socrates from Plato is largely fantasy. And now I find from Jason that Plato wasn't at all reliable either. What's important is I could study Plato for a few hours up there in the library, step out into the street in a transcendent state. And I knew it was far better than my friend's drug addiction. I was, well, just transcendent, as if the world were a complete strange place to me. Fascinating. I'd look at it as if I'd come from another planet. I had. I'd come from a Platonic painted view of historized ancient Greece, back into the streets of Southend, Essex. Traffic, people, urban life and buildings, and amazing. It was the forerunner of the transcendence that one experiences in earnest, true worship, free worship. I mean, I don't mean this stylized, ritualized, planned and organized religion. I mean charismatic, Holy Spirit, earnestness, to say the least, absolute devotion. It's as if you know the kingdom of heaven is at hand at such times. You just know you love God. Fantastic. I had none of that then, you understand. But a transcendent state in being in the thoughts of a sort of classical Greek presentation of what reality is like under analysis. But much ability without thoughts of God well, is damn dangerous and potentially incredibly self-destructive as well. It's more dangerous, you could say, than drug addiction or alcohol. But they simply achieve an oblivion, whereas most earnest secular philosophy, well, you could end up with Hitler or Stalin. Just satanic, without realizing it, without such intention. Quite simply, to not believe in God is a death sentence. May not catch you up for about 70 years, but when it does, it does. It is, in short, a path of final no hope. except for the grace of God rescuing you. And when you realize that, then you know you want to be rescued. And that's everything. Because it means you actually want to believe in God, which is dramatically different. It is, as Jesus' story would have it, to be born again. Simply to want God to exist with all your being. Bless you. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.
I'd like to mention Arthur, who was an elderly man, alcoholic, on Scrumpy. Scrumpy is what we call cider, barrel cider. It's quite alcoholic. And the youth were drinking that. He was not youth. He would frequent the Scrumpy bars, which were the sort of public bars of, well, hotels, strangely enough. But they were rough, tough places, scruffy. You know, the street people would end up there, and the Kurzweil workers would end up there. All the marginals of society, poor souls. And I had a great compassion for them. It was lovely, wasn't it? I just did. And, I mean, nothing to do with Christianity as I understood it. I don't mean that, you know. Well, I didn't understand Christianity at all, of course. Still don't. No, that's not true. Understand it all too well. Arthur, yes. I remember I used to wear trench coat. I don't know if it was Dad's. Trench coat looked like a sort of light khaki Mac raincoat. Quite heavy, sort of double-breasted, long. I mean, you know, come halfway down the calf. Could keep you warm in winter in a way. Wasn't so much a coat, more of a Mac, trench Mac. Yes. They were probably Second World War type design. And I used to wear that, which was very unusual for a youth to wear that. I mean, I won't say odd, but near it. And I gave it to him. He was very pleased. Yeah, I gave some other things to him too. He was very philosophical. A brilliant mind. He could just do Times crossword. And no, was it The Guardian? I can't remember now. I think it was The Guardian. And no problem, no difficulty. Some of the guys who were druggies and drank Scrumpy as well, not meant to mix those, of course, and they probably did at times with hazardous results, you know. I don't mean it killed them, but I don't think so anyway, but not good, not good. It would sort of have a tripling up effect. But they could do crosswords and that. I was never any good. I mean, crossword, you're joking. I can't spell English. I'm master of words, but I couldn't spell English, you know. I couldn't read very well. Well, I was getting good at reading because I was studying in most earnestly. I was getting more and more effective at reading. Yeah, I don't think I had a reading problem by then. Still had a spelling problem. Oh my goodness, yes. I thought I wouldn't pass A-levels because they just wouldn't read it. You know, it wasn't good English spelling, but they did. And I realised, as at school, and more at tech, that you could be almost illiterate sort of feeling relative to the other students, and yet because you were so good at the subject, they just couldn't let you go, sort of thing, you know. They were impressed. Because I'd become a studier, workaholic, you know. Yeah. But yes, I had a friendship with Arthur. I lost contact with him in the end, of course, as I did in the end with all my druggy friends. Clive. His parents played in, I think, the London something or other orchestra, you know. And they were elderly, though. Really, they were older parents. And he was older himself. He was late 20s, I think. He's a good friend, though. My goodness, was he on drugs? He would act strangely, and it dawned on me gradually, he acts strangely because of the drugs, you know. I didn't really know that. And he could be taking them during the daytime and that, you know, I mean. He's just behaving a bit strange and weird and distant. But a good friend. And you know, I needed good friends. I valued them. They valued me too. Staggering that I wasn't drawn into their actual drug taking or drinking or smoking. There's a great melancholy, a great sadness in that society, a great philosophical understanding in a most human way. It's as if they felt the tragedies of life, even as youth. And of course we knew all the other older marginal people in the town. First time, of course, that I come across blatant sexuality in a culture, and homosexuality too. That really repelled me and appalled me, really. Our manager of the security boys on the gates and so on, he was homosexual, and I knew it. And yeah, it was tricky, especially in our culture then. I mean, culture now is very accepting of homosexuality, but this was a culture that was a world that was not. And you know, you were with all the down and outs of society who, well, I suppose had all the psychological disorders as well, you know, and poverty and violence and ignorance, and my heart just went out to them. You know, I was repelled by, a bit like in later decades when I went to India, I mean, repelled by India, the desperate poverty, but at the same time terribly moved with compassion. You know, what do you do to help rescue these people, and on such a scale? Well, you bring them hope, don't you? Thank you, Heavenly Dad.